Hello.
Hello.
How you doing?
Welcome back.
Welcome to Q&A Wednesday. So, thank you so much for all the questions you guys have been sending us.
Yeah.
We have gotten more than we can take in a week, so we promise we will get to all of them.
Yep.
For this week, we got a ton of questions related to how do I choose the right school? So, we took all of these and we're combining them into one really long answer.
Yeah.
So the questions range from what should I look for in a studio to how do I know what program is right for my dancer? Those are kind of the same thing, but not always exactly.
And they're really big questions, so there's a lot to cover.
Right. So some of you might be looking for that first ballet focused studio. Some of you might be looking for your first dance studio in general, and some of you might be thinking my current studio isn't quite right.
Yeah.
So either way, we've got tips for what to look for, and a lot of it applies to all of these things.
Correct.
So with everything, you've heard this a million times from us, it really depends on what your child is interested in. When they're younger, if you're just starting to look for a dance studio, we really suggest that you try everything, and that means tap, lyrical, jazz, hip hop, whatever. Because you don't know what's going to stick with your kid, and those genres actually will translate to ballet in a lot of ways that we'll talk about.
For sure. And and your kid might really find that they really enjoy contemporary a whole lot more, or other styles. They might love hip hop, so you just don't know.
Right.
So really expose them, because you're never quite ballet dance is kind of a meandering pathway anyway, and so you really want to make sure that ballet is really where they want to be, and expose them to everything before they really make that commitment.
Right. Plus, at a younger age, ballet is kind of boring, and it's a lot of fun for kids to do jazz with popular music. So
For sure.
just keep that in mind.
Right, and hip hop, and
Right.
everyone
It's all
wants to do
super
those
fun.
TikTok dances and all that stuff, and so it's really fun for the kids.
Right, exactly. So when you are looking for a studio, really one thing to think about is find a studio with lots of kids the same age. And bonus points, like we were talking about before, if it offers a variety of styles,
Yep.
including ballet. Like you want ballet there, but
For sure.
the other stuff too. And at this age, unless your kid says they're like dead set on ballet, it really does, as we said before, make sense to expose them to lots of different types. One other thing is bonus points if they have boys. It just adds to the variety of the studio.
For sure.
And eventually, parents of girls, you're going to need those boys in ballet, so you might as well expose them to them early.
Yes.
There are recreational dance studios everywhere, and you can probably find one within your immediate area. You might find several. And really at this point, they don't have to be like the best studio out there. You just want your kid to have fun.
Right.
At this age, you want them to develop that love of dance and moving. So in terms of figuring it out, one way to really get a feel for the studio is to schedule a trial class. Most studios will offer either like a set of trial classes during the year or anytime during the year. And then some studios also hold an open house a couple times a year, and that allows potential new families to check it out. I know when my son was looking at his first recreational studio, we took him to a trial class. We actually took him to a couple of trial classes, and then we also went to an open house, which was great.
Right.
So as a parent, if your child attends a trial class or you go to an open house, pay a lot of attention to how the teachers interact with the kids. Also, parents, watch the other parents. This is important because you get a sense of kind of the feel of the studio.
For sure.
When Sam first started at the first recreational studio he went to, he came in and like right away joined their competition team, and no one talked to me. Like nobody talked to me. And I don't know why, but it sure made for a rough entry.
Yep.
That being said, it's not always a reason to walk away. Fortunately for me, the ice broke quickly, and I made friends with the parents there. And I'm still really close with some of them today, but just keep your eyes open for that.
Yeah, and we had the opposite effect where, all the families, we all became one big family really, really quickly. And I'm sure it was difficult for new families to kind of make an inroad, because we were one of the original families for the studio that had just opened that Abby joined when she was 5. Okay, so When you're at the point when your kid has said that they want to do serious ballet, start looking at the available ballet studios in your area. And if you happen to be lucky enough to live near a company affiliated school, go check it out. You can always attend the audition as your trial class, and you don't have to commit and say, I have to go there just because it's a company affiliated school, but definitely go and look and see what all your options are. And for the purpose of this video, we're really going to limit what we talk about to local ballet studios. There'll be plenty of time to talk about company affiliated schools and conservatories later, but and we definitely will cover it. But for now, the majority of people, they do not have access to a company affiliated school. So we're really going to focus on those local ballet schools that are in your area and how to kind of pull apart what they offer and to find the best space for you and your dancer.
Right.
First, we really do suggest to start by just making a list of all the schools are within a reasonable driving distance for your family, right? And that's different for everyone, but you really do have to kind of be clear with what you're okay with, because that drive does start at 2 days a week and then does ramp up to 5 to 6.
Right.
So, be clear with that. Because it really does become a lot more time consuming and you spend a lot of time in your car. Like I currently drive 600 miles a week. So it's important to consider your commute when you are building out this initial list of schools.
Yeah, don't underestimate that commute because you'll spend a lot of time.
A lot of time, which is great. Actually, time in the car is not a bad thing, and it gives you a lot of time to talk to the kids and find out, kind of what's going on with them, but it is a lot of car time.
It is, and it's a lot of gas.
Yes.
So when Sam was younger, we only looked at schools within about a 15-minute drive of our house. Now, we're lucky. We live in the San Francisco Bay Area, so there's a pretty robust dance community here. But my husband and I were both working full-time, and we really couldn't manage a longer commute. And like I said, we were lucky. We had a bunch of ballet studios near us, and we found one that worked for both student and the drivers. And we know, not everyone has the luxury of having that many ballet schools around. Right. But if you do, definitely work it into your consideration set because it can be a lot of time on the road. And one thing we would really encourage all of you to do is meet with the studio owner of the ballet school that your student is interested in. Sure. There are a lot of questions that you can ask, but usually you can get a lot of information from these meetings. Mm-hmm. Don't just show up and be like, hey, you have a ballet school. Can we join? Schedule an appointment with the studio owner and walk in with a list of questions you want to ask and get answered before you make any sort of a decision. Right. So the first thing you want to look at is, what are the credentials of the teachers? That's super important, especially at a dedicated ballet school. Right. So did they have professional careers? Were they college dance majors? How long have they been teaching? Those are all things that are really important. Mm-hmm. People will always tell you like, oh, it doesn't matter if they had a professional career. That's true. That's absolutely true. There are totally great teachers out there who never dance professionally. But if they didn't have a pro career, you want to know that they have had an adequate level of teacher training. Correct. So, for example, they might be RAD or ABT certified. RAD stands for Royal Academy of Dance, and ABT is the curriculum developed by ABT, the American Ballet Theater, and they do teacher training at schools all over the country. So if you have an ABT certified teacher or certified school, you have a pretty good sense it's legit. Yeah. Then that training really gives them a bit more depth of knowledge and a deep base of what's age appropriate. And age appropriate curricula is really important. Typically, if teachers do have those kinds of certifications, you can probably find it on the school's website because it's kind of a big deal. And so the schools are going to advertise it to add to the level of credibility. Mm-hmm. Teachers who have had careers, on the other hand, they know what's required to get your student to that next level. And that can really be invaluable both to your student as well as those parents like us who had no clue what we were doing. Right. So we went to Sam's teachers a lot because they had all danced professionally. They also build instant credibility with the students. Right. And, not every professional dancer ends up being a good teacher. Trust me, just because you had a career doesn't make you a great teacher. No. But often they don't have to spend as much time building credibility if they had a career and they're a good teacher. That's just gold.
Right, for sure. And the next thing is to look at the class schedule. Does the studio offer that the studio that you're looking at, does it offer enough ballet classes? Usually, the school has a lot of kids. There are enough classes. Also, look carefully at the makeup of the classes, and this is actually really important. And is there a wide age range, or are the kids of similar age? And that really does make a big difference, because you really do, when your kids are younger, you really want them to be with kids their own age for all of that social stuff that goes on top of that, on top of just the ballet training. This helps not only with ballet development, but also, as I just said, socially.
Yeah.
And you'll hear your kids starting to refer to their ballet family. And these, at the younger ages, this is where that ballet family gets built.
Yeah, and I will add that both for Sam and Abby, their ballet family started when they were like 10 or 11. Yeah. And they both have really good friends that they're still in touch with from that age.
Oh, definitely. And, from summer programs, from their first ballet schools.
Right.
I mean, Abby's still in touch with all of those kids, and whether it's over social networks or things like that, but all of those friendships really get forged, and they do stay in contact, because ballet world is actually pretty small. Also, so back on subject, leveling. Is it based on age, or is it based on skill? There are arguments for both, but it's good to know what you're getting into going in. Mm-hmm. The other thing to look at is the number of training hours each week. In general, at about age 9, dancers should be getting about 4 hours of class each week, with half of that being ballet technique. We'll be posting a generally accepted training guideline when we get a chance, but basically you can add 1 hour of ballet technique to each age from age 9 on. So 2 hours at age 9, 3 at 10, etc. And then when the kids get on point, that's extra. And then for boys, you want to add battery and rep and, dedicated men's class. So
and strength training.
And strength training for sure. And the next thing to look at is whether or not the school offers other genres. This is most important. The most important class in all of these is contemporary. If your dancer wants to move to train at a more serious ballet level, like at a pre-pro level, they absolutely need a firm grounding of contemporary. Other classes to look for, and especially younger ages, is pantomime and ballet acting. Character is another class to look for. As an aside, I had no idea what character is.
No idea what character was.
I was buying character skirts, and I was like, what is this? Right. So here is the definition of character. A style of ballet deriving from inspirational or national folk dances, or interpreting and representing particular profession, mode of living, or personality. The movements used tend to be less stylized than classical ballet, allowing for greater individual expression and diversity. So there you go. Oh my goodness, lots of information. So we hope your head isn't spinning. We've got a bit more to cover.
We do. Let's look at other types of classes. So you've looked at types of dance classes to see what's offered, but also, we were talking before about strength. What kind of cross training is offered? And I've heard people say, like, what's cross training? Well, cross training is anything that's not dance related specifically. So weight training for boys and for girls, actually. Mm-hmm. Pilates. There are a lot of schools that offer Pilates classes, both mat and reformer.
Right.
And this is really important, especially as kids start to hit puberty and they're growing and their bones are developing. It's super important that they're using muscles in ways that they don't use it when they're dancing.
Right.
And we don't pretend to be experts, but we do know it is really important that cross training start at a pretty early age. And we're not saying 7 or 8 years old, but as your kids are starting to do more demanding dance, you're going to need that strength work on top of the dance training.
Right, just to prevent repetitive use injury and things like that. And truth be told, when your kids are younger, if they're out swimming and riding their bike and running around, that's all cross training too.
Right.
So don't discount that just because it's fun. That still is like moving your body in a different way.
Right.
And that is what is really, really important.
Right, I agree. And the other thing to think about is how frequently these classes take place. Like, you don't want to have it once a semester. Like, you don't want to have a special Pilates class once a semester. You really want to know when you're evaluating a studio how frequently they take place, and are they taught by somebody in-house, or are they bringing somebody in from the outside who has a level of expertise in this stuff.
Right.
And ideally, this cross-training should happen on a weekly basis. Okay, and the list goes on. Let's now talk about performance opportunities. Does the school do shows?
Right.
How many and what type? Is it a mashup of like excerpts from lots of different ballets? Is it original choreography? Is it one long story ballet? And finally, how many shows are done each year? And is everybody cast?
Right.
So we're going to just take a minute to talk about our opinions on performing. We really think that performing from a young age is critical to developing that much needed stage presence as a dancer. So take a really hard look at how performances at the school you're looking at are handled, because I would argue that if you're looking at a studio that doesn't do a lot of shows at a young age, you might want to look elsewhere. We happen to think it's really important.
Right. And, some people view like competitions, and they'll go to multiple competitions and do several different groups and things like that. Even ballet schools are doing that too, ensembles and things like that. That's all considered shows in terms of it is stage time and it is performance. So it's really just, are they working towards something?
Right.
Do they have a few opportunities to get out there and actually perform and not just do technique all the time?
Right. And on that note, with competitions, it's also a great way to get exposure to lots of company affiliated programs as your student gets older. So competing is, as Jenny was saying, it's a great way to get on stage, but also to get in front of company affiliated schools you ultimately might be interested in.
Right.
If you want to know more on our opinions on competing, we actually have a blog post up on ballethelpdesk.com that talks in more detail about that. So feel free to head on over to our website and you can read that blog post about competing.
Right. So let's turn to outcomes. You're all watching this video because your dancer has said that they might want to dance professionally. So let's talk about how potential ballet schools can help with that. First, more on competitions. Are students from any of the schools on your list placing in the overalls at ballet competitions, or are they being offered scholarships? If they are, that typically means that the training is pretty good.
Yeah.
Regardless of what you think of competitions, if schools are consistently producing dancers that do well at YGP, IBC, things like that, other big or small competitions, chances are the training is good. Second, are students from these schools getting into strong summer programs? And does the school even allow them to leave for summer? Because that is something that you want to check in with for those schools. And as an aside, we do think personally it is important for the kids to attend summer intensives away from the home studio for a variety of reasons. Not only do we suggest it, but data from Data Points Guide also supports this. Attending summer programs is one of the 3 main criteria to improve your dancer's likelihood of having a professional career. We'll be doing a summer intensive boot camp in the fall, right before audition season, and we'll talk about all of that in depth.
In a lot more detail.
Yes. Anyway, if kids are getting into strong summer programs, then that is another indicator that it is a high training quality. Finally, if kids were leaving that local studio, where are they going? Are they headed to well-known company affiliated programs, for example, like SEB, Houston, San Francisco, or conservatories like Ellison or The Rock? Or are they headed to programs out of the country? If there's a steady stream of kids that are heading off to these programs, then that is a really good sign. What you want to look for actually is consistency. If one kid goes someplace, everyone knows about that outlier. Yeah. But year after year, is the school producing students that do take that next step to go to those bigger programs? And that typically is a pretty good sign. And of course, we know this is all dependent on talent pool and what's available in the area. But if they are consistently doing that, then this really might be a place that you want to consider or send your dancer.
Right. Totally agree.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's talk vibe. You hear your kids talking about what's the vibe of a studio.
Check.
Right. You know your kid better than anyone, right? So Do they need a warm, nurturing environment? Do they need something where the kids are a little more competitive? Honestly, Sam was and still a really competitive kid. Like, he needs to always be just a little scared. He needs teachers and students that are going to push him pretty hard. So when he was first looking around at ballet schools, he went to our neighborhood ballet school. Like, literally, you could walk there from our house. And it was the school that all the kids that he knew went to. It was in an old house. It was super warm and inviting and caring and supportive and kind. And he lasted about 3 weeks because he needed something that was going to be a little less touchy-feely and a little bit more of something where he was just a little scared each day.
Right. But I think that this is actually a really good point that I really would like to emphasize, because I think this is really where you do have to know your kid.
Right.
And how your kid thrives. Because there are some kids that get into highly competitive programs and they just wilt because they just can't stand the pressure of not having a lot of personalized attention or getting that affirmation from a teacher.
Right.
Because there are, some teachers that really are very kind of hands off, and the most you're going to get is like good, or that didn't suck.
Yeah, and it's important. And, like Jenny was saying, like, your kid better than anybody else. And, your kid's different than my kid is different from Jenny's kid. And
Right.
so it's really important. And don't feel bad if the first studio you try isn't a good fit.
Right.
Sam tried 4 different ballet studios before he found the one that worked for him. He went to trial classes, he registered for a week, and we finally found one that worked. But, sometimes you don't always make the right decision the first time, but don't beat yourself up over it.
Right. And those trial classes really are helpful in those situations.
Yeah.
We did that with Abby when she had to leave that school mid-year that I talked about in the previous video. We allowed her to go in and not make any decisions. We just kept a checklist. And then after she did all of her trial classes, then we sat down and evaluated all of the schools. And eventually, picked the one that she felt like would be best for her. But the vibe was really important.
It is. And on that note, you also want to get a sense of the parent vibe.
Yes.
You will learn so much in the lobby. So we tell everyone that if your child is taking a trial class, sit in the lobby for the entire class. I did that every time Sam did a trial class. And inevitably, there's going to be that parent that's waiting, that didn't drop them off and is coming back. There's always someone waiting there, and chat them up. I mean, I'm sure I drove parents crazy, but ask them questions. Like, ask them about the teachers. Ask them about the other parents, how involved they are,
Right.
and just kind of what the overall vibe is of the school. One thing we've learned in grilling everybody we know about ballet is people love to have their opinions asked of them. So take advantage of the time you have with them because people love to talk. And, we know this seems like a lot to think about. But all of these things are really fair game to ask. Ask the studio director, ask the parents. Like I said before, I think Sam tried 3 or 4 local ballet programs before he found one that worked. And honestly, had I had a list like the one we just gave you, it would have saved us about a year of work and a lot of headaches.
Yeah.
Because it was, it's tough. You always wonder if you're making sure you're making the right decisions. Okay, so we really hope this was helpful and that we gave you a good list and kind of a good toolkit to go and look at studios and evaluate them. And this is the end of our video, but as always, keep the questions coming our way and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and follow us on Facebook. We will continue to try to answer your questions as quickly as we can. Unfortunately, we're getting a whole lot, which we appreciate, but we will get to them as quickly as we can. So thanks for watching, and we will see you next week.
Thanks so much. Bye-bye.